listening to Second Wind with Joyce Buford, where women who are ready to expand their life adventure discover the tools to stop playing small and tap into the courage required to enjoy their second wind. Welcome.
Good morning. This is Joyce Buford on Second Wind, and I am delighted that you have decided to join us today because, as usual, you're going to hear a great show from an informed guest, one that has created a brand new life after her divorce and her transition. But now she leads those going through divorce. So I'll be introducing her. But I want to remind you that Second Wind was really created so that anybody that's gone through a life-changing experience, which I had at that time, which was my divorce, I wanted something to support women out there, something to encourage them to think bigger, to think that their life isn't over, it's just reshaping. And so it was really important for me, and I have loved this journey that I've been on with podcasting, that I keep you informed by having for you the best guests that I can find. So I am thrilled that you are here. Now, I will push again that the success of any transition, anybody in life, absolutely, it's about connections and support. So this is two of those for you today, both of those for you today. So thank you for being here. Our guest today is Rosalind Sadaka, and she is a certified divorce coach, and she is recognized as the voice of child-centered divorce. She is a divorce and a co-parenting coach and founder of the Child-Centered Divorce Network, which provides advice, programs, coaching, and other valuable resources for parents who are facing or moving through or transitioning after a divorce. She is the coach of how do I tell the kids about the divorce? Very scary time for the children and the parents. Create a storybook guide to prepare your children with love, an international acclaimed ebook designed to help parents get through the tough divorce talk about best possible outcome for themselves and their children. Rosalind has also created strategies, several ebooks and e-courses on co-parenting success strategies, including an 8-hour anger management program for co-parents. She also hosts the Divorce, Dating, and Empowered Living radio show and podcast. So welcome, Rosalind. It's great to have you here.
Well, thank you, Joyce. It's a pleasure to be with you today.
I'm looking at all that you have created, and I have to ask you, when did you go through your transition?
Well, thanks for asking that. Yeah, so my divorce was in the mid-90s, so quite a while ago. But my son was 11 years old, and I had put off the divorce for many years because I didn't want to harm him emotionally. And so I kept staying in the marriage. And finally, it reached a point when my son was starting to show symptoms, headaches, tension headaches, and other things. And I knew that something had to give, and I need to make the break. And I finally did that. And then I was very concerned about how to break the divorce news to my son, and ended up creating a very innovative, unusual approach, which was a storybook format with family photos. And then I moved on into learning how to co-parent effectively with my ex, my former husband. Right. And we worked through all of that, and life moved on over the years. And one day when my son was in his early 20s, so this was a long time after, he came to me out of the blue one day and he said, Ma, you and Daddy did a really good job with your divorce. And I just want to thank you, because most of my friends whose parents divorced either hate their parents or are very angry at them. And I think you guys were great. And Joyce, I let out such a sigh of relief because I was holding on to so much guilt and anxiety. You know, did I screw my kid up and all of that?
Yeah.
And that became, I started thinking about what I learned and what I did, and that we created an amicable divorce and co-parenting experience, which was a real plus for my son. And I realized I had a lot that I could share with other people going through the process. And that's when I founded the Child-Centered Divorce Network, became a divorce and co-parenting coach, and started writing my ebooks and e-courses and programs for other people so that they can avoid the serious mistakes that too often we see in the headlines that create a lot of unnecessary drama and pain for everyone in the family.
Yeah. I can remember when I was going through my divorce, or first thinking about going through it, my thought was, is it better to stay in the marriage that's dysfunctional and not working, or is it better to get a divorce? And that, you know, once you arrive at that decision, you had the signs of your son, but there were probably signs even in my family. You know, I'm certain, because it was no surprise when we sat down to have our conversation, as it probably wasn't for your son, was it?
Not on some levels. I mean, he was surprised and devastated by the news, but on another level, he had heard us fighting for months and more than a year beforehand. There was tension at home, and that's why he was picking up on all of that.
Right.
So yes, their kids are usually aware. The energy changes in a home where life isn't running smoothly, and they pick up on things, whether they acknowledge it or not, and of course, depending on their age.
Yeah, right. Well, you know, there are no winners in divorce. When a family breaks up, everybody loses. And so it's a lot of recovery from pain, and it really is a life-changing experience. But I'm just amazed at all of the information and the support that you have created over your years of coaching and leading people. Awesome.
Thank you.
My compliments to you, because this is a lot of stuff. I love the idea of creating a storybook guide. That's awesome. With pictures, then you created all this to prepare your son for the message.
Well, these are family photos. So I created an ebook with fill in the blank templates, and I wrote most of the text talking about the steps that parents need to follow to break the divorce news to the children in the best possible way. But what makes it unique is that parents can customize that text depending on the size of their family, how many kids are there, what the situation is, and also add family photos, because I discovered that children love seeing pictures of themselves. And at the same time, while we have pictures of wonderful holidays and vacations and school events and all of the things that parents keep for the children, very often children don't have an understanding that there was a life before they were born. There was a past over the years when they were younger. There's a present that may be tense and scary and insecure at the moment, but there's going to be a future too. And parents need to reassure their children that this is a change in the stage of our family. We are still a family. We will always be a family, but now the form is changing, and now we're going to be living in two houses and having some changes. Other things are going to stay the same. And that gives children a sense of security that life is going to go on. And then we have to reassure them that mom and dad are both going to be taking care of the details to make sure that everything's going to be okay. Kids need to feel this isn't the end of the world, that things are going to be taken care of, that they're still in good hands, that they're still loved, that both of their parents will always be their parents. They're not going to lose either one of them. And when kids have that reassurance, which is part of the text in my storybook, it helps them move ahead in a much more successful way. And so it's the foundation for everything. And I have 6 psychotherapists contributing to the book that reassure the entire family that things can be handled in a positive way as long as mom and dad get on the same page. And that's what we really stress for the parents. It's up to you to set the tone and the mood for this divorce. It's not up to the children. And if you get on the same page and you don't point the finger at one another and disparage one another in front of the children, then you're off to a much healthier start.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. You included, it was interesting that you included, and appropriately so, that an 8-hour anger management program as one of your courses that you offer for parenting, co-parenting, for co-parenting. They probably needed it when they were together parenting. But, there's a lot of people, and my family was certainly one, that just really don't know how to argue.
Mm-hmm.
We're just not equipped. I mean, I don't think my family, I ever saw I saw frustrations, but I didn't see anger, or it's certainly not healthy anger.
Yeah.
Is there a thing as healthy anger?
Well, yes, there is. We all get angry. And so it's very important for children and adults to learn communication skills, to learn how to handle conflict and emotions that are tough for them, hurt and pain and anxiety and frustration, to be able to handle that and express it. And children are not going to learn that unless their parents teach them and unless parents are role modeling it. So no matter what you lecture to your children, as you well know, if you're role modeling anger and getting physically violent or abusive to your spouse, then that's what children are going to see and pick up. And so co-parenting is all about how you parent your children after divorce.
Yes.
And it's another stage to go into, and it's a stage that can be handled in a very smooth transition for the benefit of both of the parents as well as the kids, or it can be handled very poorly. And of course, we see stories in the news all the time about people who handle it poorly and the examples that they have. And adult children of divorce are the first ones to speak out about the pain that they suffered in their childhood. So my passion in life is to keep generations in the future from having to experience the hurt, the pain, the sadness, the frustration, the anxiety, the humiliation. It's such a terrible situation as a child to be faced with these adult issues and not have adults acting in a mature manner and helping their children cope.
Yeah. Yes, it is. It just adds another layer of complex difficulty when there's two relationships that aren't communicating well enough for the children.
Absolutely.
Okay. Now, somewhere you have expanded into dating after divorce. Now, was most of your earlier career in the actual divorce process and the co-parenting? Was that primarily how you focused your work? And then you decided, you realized people were wanting to date, and so this is phase 2 or phase 3 of your growth?
Exactly. It was an organic transition, because first I went through the divorce and I had to learn all the skills in co-parenting to raise my son, who was 11 at the beginning, and raised him to adulthood. And then after the divorce took place for me, and my ex and I mastered the co-parenting, well, both of us were single adults. And then I was out there in the dating and midlife world as a parent, which is very different. If you don't have children, then dating when you're single is very different. And you have to be extremely mindful about not only you're choosing a good partner, but choosing a good partner who's going to be another parent for your children. And how do you break the news to your children that you've met someone special that you want to spend your life with? And how do you deal with all the anxiety and jealousy and insecurity that the children are going to be experiencing? Right. And most important, how do you choose a good partner after you've had a a marriage that wasn't successful for you, that may have left you with hurt and pain and anxiety and frustration. I want to make sure that people understood that if you don't make a healthy choice, there are people who are serial daters and serial divorcers who've not had one divorce, but 2 or 3 or 5 or 6, because if you don't learn the lessons from the first divorce, you're going to keep repeating. You're going to find someone with a different face, but the same personality types, the same issues, and you're going to have the same conflicts. So I learned that very early on while I was dating. And ultimately, I met a man and I'm remarried for 20 years now. But I was single for about 8 years. And during those 8 years, I learned a lot about dating and finding a healthy relationship. And so I created several e-courses and programs, one for women and one for men on dating. And I wrote a book with my sister's a psychotherapist, and we collaborated on the book, 99 Things Women Wish They Knew Before Dating After 40, 50, and yes, 60.
That's a good book. Everybody needs that book.
Absolutely, because dating in midlife and older has its own challenges, you know, especially for women. We bring a lot of insecurities as we age. We start feeling, do I not look as good as I should? And men don't think about those things nearly as often as they should themselves. But men don't think about it, but women are forced to think about those things. So you're looking at your appearance and you're looking at your insecurities and doubts. Who's going to want me? Maybe I'm too heavy. Maybe I'm not this enough or not that enough. And you may have wounds that were impacted from the divorce or from other breakups, and you start feeling insecure, and then you start saying, it's not worth it. I think I'll remain alone the rest of my life because I don't want the pain anymore. And you deny yourself the joy of partnership and friendship and love and sex and the wonderful part of being in a relationship.
Right.
So there's a lot to unravel. And in my book and courses, we focus on creating healthy relationships, especially some of the pitfalls to avoid and red flag warning signs that a relationship isn't healthy. How do you know you found a keeper? What does a healthy relationship look like? How to approach dating, especially from the inside out, because none of this, relationships are not about the outside in, having flirting techniques or a personality or how good you look. They're really about how well you love yourself, what level your self-esteem is at, how confident you are in who you are, so that you know immediately when you meet someone when the warning goes off in your gut, you trust your gut and say, I'm out of this relationship. This isn't good for me. This isn't healthy for me. So there's a lot of questions we need to ask ourselves and a lot of steps to take. And that's what I focus on.
Well, once a woman makes that decision that she is ready to have a partner or look for a partner, if she has children, then is it one of the discussions that you talk with your child that you're going to be doing this, or is it you certainly don't just surprise them by saying, oh, I have a date?
No, you don't want to.
How do you do that?
Yes, that's a great question, and thanks for asking that. Well, first of all, everything is age appropriate, so it depends on the age of your child how you approach all of these things. But you don't want to be sharing your dates with your children of any age, because in the beginning we date, we may have 1, 2, 3 dates and then move on. And you don't want to have a revolving door of people that your children are meeting. Sometimes they get attached to someone, they like him for 6 weeks and suddenly that person's out of your life. Right. So the rule is to date on your own, on your off time, when the kids aren't around, when you have a babysitter and you know they're safe, and have all your start your social life. And you don't have to talk to them about that at first, or if they're old enough and start asking questions, then you could say that mom's going out to meet some new friends and activities. But when you've found someone who is, let's say, a keeper, someone who you're getting serious with after
Right.
a serious period of time, then yes, you want to talk to your children in an age-appropriate way and say, your mom has been meeting some people, going out, doing some things, and I have a new friend that I'm very excited about, and I'd love you to meet that person. And you want to wait as long as possible to make sure that this is someone worth their meeting. And then you have to expect that your children are going to have all kinds of reactions. You know, you may have 2 or 3 kids and all of them will have a different reaction. Some kids will be very excited for you. Oh, wow, that's wonderful, Mom. I'm so glad you're going to go out again. I can't wait to meet this person. Others are going to be very anxious and insecure and jealous because they're afraid that maybe your love and attention is going to go to another person, which is an understandable feeling for children to have. And they need a lot of reassurance from you that love that mom has for their child has nothing to do with any kind of love or affection for another person. It's a different love and there's no competition. And the kids may need to hear that again and again. They may need reassurance. They may also be protecting their other parents.
Yes.
Dad may or may not be dating, and you need to reassure them that none of this is going to in any way impact the fact that their other parent is still in their life and still loves them and is still part of our family equation. So it's complicated.
Yeah.
You also want to be very mindful about making sure you're ready to go out into the dating world, because too many people do it prematurely. They're so relieved to be out of the divorce and they want to go out. Being in love is a wonderful feeling. Everyone loves the romance of being in love in the early stages, but we get so attached to that we can be oblivious to the fact that there's a lot of trappings. And if we don't ask ourselves some serious questions and look within, we can be setting ourselves up for more disappointment and frustration and heartbreak in another relationship because we're not prepared. And the number one question to ask yourself is, what qualities do I have that make me a desirable person for someone else to love? And the first quality has to be that I love myself. I value myself. I love myself. I respect myself. And I know I'm a great catch. If you don't believe that when you're going out, then you're going to attract people who are going to exploit you, take advantage of you, and hurt you. And a lot of people are walking around with kick me signs on their back. They don't know it. And they find people who are going to take advantage of them. And so if you don't love yourself and think you're a great catch, that's the time to get coaching, get counseling, join a group, read some self-help books, do something so that you can really find ways to love and value yourself. What lessons did I learn from the divorce? What part did I play in the divorce? It's very easy to point the finger and say, well, that SOB was this and that and the other thing, and I'm so glad to get rid of that person. But you chose that person. What about me made the choice to choose that person? How long did I stay on when I should have left? What should I have done differently? What questions should I have asked early on? What warning signs was I not aware of? What did I accept that was abusive and exploitive in behavior? And you need to have answers for that. What is the gift from my divorce? If you look at your divorce and say, as painful as it may have been, there's a gift. I will never do that again. I will never be with someone like that again. I will never accept this kind of behavior again. Well, that's a gift because you've learned something and you're moving ahead and honoring yourself and loving yourself. And when a woman goes out into the dating world, honoring herself and loving herself, and excited about pursuing her own passions and interests, it makes all the difference in the world in who she's going to attract into her life.
Right. Yeah. Now, is all of this that you're talking about, is that in the book that you wrote?
Oh, absolutely. That's in the Things book, and it's also in the dating and relationship program.
Oh, okay.
Women Dating Rescue.
Oh, yes. Yes.
Yes, because nothing matters if you're not following those insights and taking steps to do that first. Then it doesn't matter what you do, how you look, how you act, where you go. None of that matters, because on the inside you're still wounded and hurt, and people will pick up on that. So you have to love yourself and believe in yourself and be ready and prepared and know what you're looking for. And that takes some wisdom and some time.
It does.
So rather than rushing out, it's better to do the inner work first and then go out into the world with confidence, knowing that you deserve a high quality person in a healthy relationship, and you're aware of what a healthy relationship means. And so you're not going to be blindsided by abusers, because unfortunately there's a lot of abusers out there, but not everyone. There are wonderful men out there. There are wonderful women out there. We just have to be in the right mindset to attract them to us.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. How do we attract them? Do you encourage, I know in person, but where in person? You know, a woman's probably not used to going to a bar. In where I live, certainly, I don't think there are women in the 50s and 60s go to the bars as much. Right. But where do you encourage us to go gather?
That's a great question. And the answer is doing what you haven't been doing in the past, because we are creatures of habit as human beings. And we have our group of girlfriends, and we're used to going to this place, this restaurant for that, this gathering, this thing for a sports or a hobby. And we get stuck in a routine. And so we keep repeating meeting the same people because we're in the same environments. We have to break the mold. So first ask yourself, what am I passionate about? And what have I always wanted to do that I've been putting off for most of my life, either because of marriage or kids or work or other obligations? Now I'm reinventing myself. And maybe it's taking a course at the college or at the high school adult ed. Maybe it's following a sport or an activity, or volunteering at a hospital or a animal shelter, or whatever it is, taking dance lessons. But whatever it is, follow your passions and your interests, because you don't have to necessarily be going somewhere to meet a mate. What you want to do is feel excited and happy and joyful in being in a place or an environment that you love, doing an activity you love. And that's when you're more likely to meet new people. It may be another woman who happens to have a brother who's single. It may be a neighbor who's doing something in the community who happens to have a friend who's single. Or it may be that you bump into someone, and after a few weeks you find that you're really attracted to each other, but you were doing something at the place where you weren't going specifically for that purpose, but there you are with a shared interest. So follow your bliss and follow your passion, and that makes a huge difference, because you'll meet the quality people who are already in alignment with you. Yes. And the problem with going to bars is the only thing you have in common is that you both have a drink in your hand. And you know nothing else about that person other than their appearance. The odds are never as good as finding someone in a classroom setting or in an animal shelter or in doing an activity that you love, and finding someone else who also loves doing that. You already have something to talk about.
Right. Yeah, that's a lot of marriages, first marriages, sometimes they're out of early on relationships where the guy does one thing and the woman does another thing, and we don't seem to spend as much time doing the same things. Now, I love music. My husband loved to hunt. So that's kind of how we developed. So I can so see your recommendation in doing something that you love, and also being meeting somebody that also has the same interest. That's pretty good.
Yeah, it makes a huge difference. And as we get older, we find that it's shared values and interests are really, really important.
Yes.
You know, when you're starting out in your 20s, it's so physical and it's so sexual that you overlook a lot of things because you have that chemistry. And then as you mature, you realize how important it is to have shared values, shared interests, and also a shared future. It's very important when you're single in midlife to talk about, as you age, do you want to travel and see the world, or do you want to stay home and be close to the grandkids? Right. Well, that's a huge difference, and you could do both. But if one of you doesn't like one of those things, then you want to know that. You want to have a vision of how often you're going to be in the home, how often you're going to be out of the home, and things along that line, because it's so important to have those common goals and visions, especially as we age, and especially as work becomes less and less of a priority, and you have the senior time to decide what you want to do that's meaningful in your life.
There's another area I want to ask you about that I can see where it would cause a lot of frustration. I have been around couples when we talk about money coming into the marriage with different pocketbooks. Some people, men particularly, I find, maybe women too, but they tend to want to keep their money separate. And I kind of think, does that whole philosophy of blending the money and building the pot, is that just thrown out the window when you're in your later years and you remarry?
Well, it often is much less often chosen to be the path when you're in midlife and on. When you're young and starting out, both of you don't have a lot. And so blending the not a lot is very easy, and it's our purse and our money. But when you move into second marriages and others, and when you move into relationships later on, and everyone is bringing a different background and different kinds of bank accounts, very often it's common for he to have his checking account, for her to have her checking account, and then to have our checking account, where we do things together as a couple, and that's our money. But money that I made 20 years ago in my career before I met you is still my money. And that money is earmarked for my children and grandchildren when I pass.
Right.
And those are conversations to have. Doing wills when you are in a second or third marriage are much more complicated because of that, because there's so many more layers of children and grandchildren and whose is what. But it's reality, and it's very common for people to have different ways of dispersing money and monitoring the money that they came into the relationship with.
Right. So how do they normally do the joint part of the living together? Is that you do the rent, I do this, or is it you put so much into the pot and out of the pot comes those?
That's how my husband and I do it, and it's very common to have money in the pot every month. This amount of money goes into the pot, so that covers everything, and it covers eating out and all of the expenses that we are doing as a couple. So our lifestyle is covered by that. But if my husband wants to buy a new computer and I want to do something special and separate, then we dip into our own other accounts for that kind of thing. Right. And sometimes we travel together to see the children and grandchildren, and sometimes one of us will travel separately to see our children and grandchildren. And so there's a lot of differences, and that easily gets covered that way by having the yours, mine, and ours financially.
Right. Well, it was, I saw this, but I don't know, one day I was in Santa Fe, New Mexico, And there's a lot of blended families there, second, third
Mhm.
marriages. And I was just observing this one man and woman having this conversation. And obviously their money was in different pots. And it was just made an impact on me because they were having difficulty deciding who was supposed to pay for this.
Wow.
And so anyway, but you have guidelines in the book, I'm sure.
Mhm.
Yes, right. Now, okay, so we've talked about choosing the mate, how to get there. I love your ideas about doing those things you don't, to expose yourself, going out and doing new things, but
Mhm.
also paying attention to the things that you love to do. And those are important because as we get older, those are the things we need to be spending our time on because they give us
Exactly.
joy and success. And so that's a great idea. Um, Now, one thing that um, you talk about some of the red flag warnings that you can see when dating somebody.
Mhm.
What are those?
Yeah, they're important. So I'm sure when I speak about these, they're going to ring a bell for you as, oh yes, oh yes. When you find a partner who's suddenly extremely jealous
Uh-huh.
and is questioning you about who's that and who's that, and being overly concerned about all of your activities, someone who's overly controlling. I don't
Yes.
like that you're doing that, or that you went there, or I don't like that you're calling your mother so often. Those are red flags. Someone
Yeah.
who starts isolating you from these things start slowly and subtly, but suddenly they don't want you out with the girls, and they don't want you to be doing things like that. If you're not with them, then why bother doing that? And suddenly you realize that you're losing your friendships and your closeness with people in your life.
That happens a
Also,
lot.
yes, it does. That's why these people are so toxic.
Yeah.
Also, a person who's quick to anger. Everyone's great on the first few dates and charming, but you need to catch people and watch them behave when they're dealing with challenges in a restaurant, in traffic, just in life, when things happen. Are they too quick to anger? Do they jump from 0 to 60 in a second? And suddenly you're looking at this person and you're looking in their eyes and they're furious about something that just didn't warrant that level of anger.
Yes.
Also, if they intimidate you, people can subtly threaten or intimidate you, do that, but I'm not happy about you doing that, and don't think I'm not going to let you know about it. And they
Oh.
may, the tone of voice, the body
Uh-huh.
language, the subtle threats or actual threats about things. Again, this is all someone who feels that they should have power over you. And women, of course, are very vulnerable to that if you don't
Yeah.
have high self-esteem.
Yes.
And if you've
Yes.
accepted it in past relationships, then this may be your pattern. And you may
Right.
be attracting someone like that, and you need to catch it as early on as possible. Of course, a huge red flag is verbal or sexual abuse. I mean, there are people whose anger suddenly runs into being physical, or they're calling you names and degrading you and putting you down, disrespecting you. And you may have accepted that in your first relationship, and suddenly this is ringing a bell for you. Oh my
Yeah.
God, I've heard this before. Or
Right.
someone who's actually physically throwing things or hurting you, slapping you, pushing you down.
Mm.
So any kind of abuse is a huge red flag. And
Right.
then there are also people who have rigid role expectations, meaning women
Oh,
have to
yes.
do this, and it's
Yes.
your place to do that, and I don't do that. And it's their rules. They have those expectations. They come with them. That they saw their father do that, and they're
Mhm.
just following that. You need to catch that early on as well,
Yeah, that's a
and
good one.
yes. So
Yeah.
all of those kinds of things are huge red flags that somehow when we were younger we may have overlooked them,
Uh-huh.
or it took longer for that to come into play. And finally, we were married for 5 years before it all exploded. Now we have to be very mindful and say, I'm looking at that. That's a red flag. I'm not sticking around any longer. I'm out of here.
Yeah. I want to share this with you because I thought I from another divorce coach, and I thought it was a great idea. She said she recommended that when you're going out to dinner, one of the things you can do is, although you've made plans to go someplace, you can say, I'm really not in the mood for Chinese tonight. Could we go to Italian instead? And it's really to see how flexible the person is,
Mhm.
how easily he or she could take that request. And I thought,
Exactly.
what a clever idea. I would have never thought of that.
Yeah, now you may want to wait a date or two in before you do
Try
that.
that.
Or you may get a hint that this is someone that you need to test early on. Again, it depends.
Yeah.
It depends on who you're with. But
Yeah.
yes, those kinds of things are important because it shows that we are valuing ourselves and our time. I'm not going to waste my time on someone who isn't worthy of me.
Right.
And that takes high self-esteem. And
Yeah.
that's what it is so important for every woman to have all through her life.
Yeah. Well, one of the things when you talk about self-esteem and respecting ourselves, I've always felt it was valuable to go over for. I wrote a book on values. Now, women don't particularly ever have that course. What are your values? What do you value? And so I wrote that book, but only because men deal with that and professional women do more in companies where they choose the values of the company. So they're familiar with it. So I found that I have it's been enlightening for several women to be able to really express what their values are, find out what they like, and know that they really do have an opinion about that.
Mm-hmm.
And then the borders, what are your guardrails? In other words, will you accept and will not accept? They don't know that.
Boundaries.
In a lot of, yes, they don't have those boundaries.
Mm-hmm. You're so right.
Yeah. So that's all part of the get to love yourself and understand who you are and know you must have boundaries, and they are very important.
That's right.
In any relationship. So now, are there other red flags, or did you cover them?
Well, I covered the red flags, but if you'd like, we can cover these signs that you found a keeper.
Oh, yes.
Some people don't have a clue. They've been in so many toxic relationships, they don't know what a good one would feel like or look like. So let's talk about that.
Oh, we definitely want to talk about that.
First of all, you want to be comfortable being yourself in that relationship. You don't have to twist and change and flip your boundaries to be with this other person. They like and respect you, and you like and respect yourself when you're with that person in that relationship. That's a huge sign of a good, healthy relationship. Right. And that your time together is enjoyable. You're having fun. Your sense of humor is peaked. It's just a good experience. You don't have tension and stress when you're with them. Some people are in stress and tension all the time in relationships, and that's not good. So your time together should really be enjoyable. Everyone has off days, but most times it should be fun. You're also like knowing that this person is emotionally available. If you're off and you want a shoulder to cry on, you should be able to call him and say, this happened and that happened, and have someone who's consoling and compassionate and empathic with you. It's very important to have an empathic partner. Yeah. And we don't always get that. Yeah. And another sign of a healthy relationship, especially in midlife, is that you're hooked on more than just romance. Because yes, romance and sex is fabulous, but it isn't 24 hours a day. And you have to find that you're hooked on qualities about this person beyond that. There's something about his character, his sense of humor, his values and beliefs, the interests that you share, so that your days are filled. And you feel about this person that they are a best friend. When you're in a relationship with someone, your partner should be your best friend, and a safe place that you can fall when things are down for you, and someone that you could share the best of your life with because they really respect and love you. And that's so important to find. Also, your family and friends like this person. If you start, very often your family and friends will pick up on someone who's not a keeper before you and start saying, I'm not sure about this and that. So if your friends and family say, oh, she's great, he's great, that's a real plus. And one of the qualities that they have is not only respecting you, but keeping his agreements. Someone who says, I'm going to do this, and you can trust them, you could depend on them. They keep their agreements. They're not lying and just manipulating you around. Right. And that there's a sense of synchronicity. You're hooked together because of so many things that make you feel that you are a couple, you are a partnership, you're engaged in activities and beliefs and dreams and goals that are in sync with one another, so that there's an alignment into the future, and you share a vision of the future together. That is just very, very important, especially as we age. So those are the peak qualities of knowing that you found someone who's really worth being in a relationship with.
Yeah. You know, one of mine would be that you laugh.
Yes.
I just think it's so important to laugh.
Sense of humor is very, very important. I agree with you.
Yeah. Yeah. Those are all wonderful things. I think I need the book.
Well, it's on Amazon and it's on my website, so it's easy enough to find.
Yes, that would be a valuable tool to have in my toolkit for sure. Now, we didn't talk on forgiveness and loving yourself. We did talk about loving yourself, but there is forgiveness that has to pursue in a divorce situation, and some forgiveness of ourselves that has to be pursued as well. So I know we're running out of time, but is there a way for you to share just a few comments about the forgiveness that is so important?
Yes, you're right. It is so important. The thing about forgiveness that a lot of people don't understand is that forgiveness is the gift we give to ourselves. So we don't forgive the other person to let them off the hook, to pretend that the hurt that they inflicted on us didn't exist, or making it less significant now, because those things are real. We forgive because there's an emotional hook between us and that person that has created a lot of pain. And you could almost feel the tension between you. There's like an emotional tension that stays there. And what you want to do is cut that cord. You want to break the bond so that when I think of that person, I don't have to think that I'm in pain and suffering anymore. And that means I'm cutting it, I'm letting go, I'm moving on from that person, and I'm moving on from the hurt. So it's the forgiveness is letting go and moving on. And it's an easier thing to understand. So first we forgive ourselves because we deserve self-love. And we don't want to be blaming ourselves and bullying ourselves and beating ourselves up for months and years after an incident happened. And then we forgive the other person because we want to be free of the pain that was inflicted on us. And that's the difference.
Yeah, good words of wisdom. I also think that, you know, the forgiveness that they talk about at church, my church, sometimes gives the impression that it's a one-time done deal. In other words, you know, you just say, oh, I forgive, and it's done. And I disagree with that. I think it comes back and you go through the process again of saying, I forgive.
Yes.
How do you feel on this?
I totally agree with you. Yes, because because as long as you're emotionally caught up and that hurt flickers back, whether it's once a day or once a week or even less often, whenever it comes back, we have to cut that cord again. We have to emotionally distance ourselves, let it go, and say, I forgive again. Because yes, we can go back and relive an incident and be hurt again, feel the pain again. And so we forgive again. And that reminds us that we have the power over our lives. No one is controlling us. That's the real blessing, is that we're not being controlled by another person. The only one we can fix in our life is us. The only one we can help and control in our life is us. We can't do it for other people, much as we'd like to, much as we've tried. Right. And so once we understand that, then we could look within and say, what can I do to make my life easier, smoother, and more of a blessing? Right. And letting go of other people's control over us is a huge step in that direction.
Yeah, I agree. This has been really a great podcast. You've given us so much information, so much that I think I've got to buy the book because I can't remember it all. So I love the work that you're doing. It is so necessary to help women go through that difficult time, and men go through that difficult time in their lives and rebuild. Because there is, as you have experienced, a happy life on the other side with a new mate. And maybe there's a happy life on the other side without a mate, which is the road I've chosen. So whatever is our choice, then certainly your book would be of value to any reader. So I thank you very much for being with us today, Roz. It's been very informative.
Well, thank you so much. It's been a pleasure talking to you. I love what you're doing, and I value the fact that you're having these wonderful podcasts.
Yeah. Okay. Now, I'm sorry. I always ask 2 questions before I end with a guest. And so one of the things, and this is about your transition, you know, how you did it. When you were facing the transition that you went through, whatever, your divorce would probably be that, but could have been another one. What was the important step that you took, the most important step, the word of wisdom that you might give to somebody that's making that decision?
Well, first, as a parent, I have to keep reminding myself that I'm a role model for my children, even when they're adults. And so I have to be mindful at all times of how I'm behaving, especially around my children and regarding my children. And then for myself, I have to remember that no one is going to love and respect you if you don't love and respect yourself. So people treat us the way we show them how we accept to be treated. And so if you're not feeling loved and respected and valued by other people, then rather than saying, how can I force them to feel differently about me? The answer in life for everything is always to turn within, because that's where you have choices. I could change this, I could shift that, I could try that. We have to stop thinking that we can fix and change and control other people, because we can't.
Right. Yeah. Second question. What was the greatest success of your transition?
Well, the greatest success for me was my son coming to me that day and thanking me for the way I handled the divorce. Yes. And the fact that he has loved and respected the men that I was in a few serious relationships before I married, and then I've been married now for 20 years. And he loves my husband. And that has been very, very important to me, that he's still very close to his own father, but he's embraced the men who were close to me in my life. And to me, that's an added blessing, that he liked and respects the people that I've chosen to be with him, and never felt jealous or in conflict with them. So that was a huge blessing that I was able to create for myself.
Yeah. Very good. Thank you for those answers to those questions. I knew you were going to say about your son when I said the best success. I just knew you were going to say that because that was an awesome thing for your son to say. And I'm sure it was true, or he wouldn't have said it.
Absolutely.
So, yes, nothing more truthful than that. So, audience, I'd like for you to think about those friends out there that would need to hear this conversation today. You have a great opportunity to share with them this message. So I hope you'll just do that. Call them up, send them to Second Wind with Joyce, or just share it with them when it comes on Facebook and you see all the advertisements about the show. It is a wonderful opportunity to support your friend that is going through divorce. Then also, as something that I always like to do is for you this week to reflect over your relationship with your husband, where you stand, how strong are you in your relationship, what could you do better in your relationship. Maybe you need to go to Rosalind's website, which is womendatingafter40.com. Now, Rosalind, let me ask you this. If they are not dating after 40, would they also get the support and help that you offer through your coaching for women in the transition of divorce?
Absolutely.
On that website? So it's all on that website.
Yes.
Right?
And at child-centered divorce as well, because I do coaching there and coaching long after divorce in any level of transition.
Yeah.
So reaching me at either place is going to get you to me. Yes. And to the options that I offer.
Yes. So I encourage you to go to the website, find out what she offers. If divorce is coming on your radar now, you're thinking maybe you need to divorce or not sure, have this conversation with Rosalind about the forthcoming days for you. So this is a great support, and I hope you'll take advantage of it. I know it's the right step for you if this is where you need to be, because Rosalind is amazing, all of the support that she has available for you. So I thank you, and I thank you for being here today and every week if you come back to listen to my guests. So thank you for being here. Remember, this week is a new week, and I wish you the best. Have a great week.
Joyce Buford returns next week at the same time for another edition of Second Wind. Through the Joyce Buford Empowerment System, women are receiving the support they need through their transitions and are able to reclaim their true purpose with confidence. They receive the tools they need to map out new lives. You can find out more about her coaching services at joycebufordempowers.com.